Good morning and welcome to hear the insights of fixed wireless access. How is the market evolving? Where lies the opportunities and what are the biggest challenges? And today here with me, I have three industry experts to discuss about the role and future of fixed wireless access. And you, audience, we have the opportunity to take some of your questions, so please use the Q&A chat and we will pick some of your questions from there. But welcome, Yves Bellego from Orange, William Webb from Access Partnership, and Nick Angelov from WIM Technologies. Before we get going with the question, it would be really great to start with a short introduction to the fixed wireless access. What is your and your kind of company's take on it? So please, actually, William, could you go first?
I will do. Thank you very much, Katri, and welcome to everyone. So I now work for a consultancy company, which covers a wide area of telecoms and policy issues. But actually, in the last couple of years, I've had some quite deep involvement with two different fixed wireless access ventures. And both have led to the same conclusion that actually probably the key issue, as far as I see it, is one of financing. So for a while, I was trying to raise some finance for a new UK operator to deploy in the 60 gigahertz band using the unlicensed spectrum there, using the teragraph type of application. And the business case looks very good in towns where there's not an existing good broadband service. It's quite feasible to deploy this on lampposts or similar and get a really good gigabit service. The problem I found there was actually the type of funding that was needed was coming from private equity companies, the sort of companies that pension funds invest in and similar. And they were looking for what they would term an infrastructure investment, by which they mean something that is going to be there for a long period of time and is lower risk for them in that if the company that's operating it goes out of business, the infrastructure remains there. And that's clearly so with fibre. You can imagine that the operating company could go out of business, but the fibre is still there. You can still connect up to either end of it. You can still deliver a service. But they were less sure that that was the case with fixed wireless access. And again, you can understand why. It's kind of a hybrid. I mean, the equipment will be there, but will it still be possible to operate it if you've got a different operator behind that? And so it proved very difficult to get the funding needed to get that venture off the ground. And in fact, we didn't succeed in getting the funding. My second experience was actually working with a manufacturer of millimeter wave fixed wireless access equipment, looking to develop new equipment using the 5G millimeter wave technology in the 26 to 30 gigahertz bands. And again, the economics and the technology looks very good. Essentially, you can leverage the supply chain of 5G chipsets, the sort of thing you can already get in a 5G handset, in order to build fairly cheap fixed wireless access consumer equipment and relatively cheap base stations. But again, getting the funding to develop that equipment, even though it wasn't a huge amount of money, proved really tough. Venture capital companies typically don't want to invest in hardware companies. Software is a much easier bet because there's fewer restrictions on import and export. And when you scale software, you don't effectively need to build more and more and more. You just simply copy the same bit of software and sell it multiple times. Whereas with hardware, of course, you've got to build bigger factories and bigger cash flow and everything else. So actually, both of those ventures didn't go well in the fixed wireless access market, which is unfortunate because I think it's an important marketplace. But I think it points to the fact that actually, at least from my point of view, it's not really a technological issue. It's not even really understanding where it can be used. I think we know that. It's actually persuading those making the investment in this space to do so in order to generate the money that's needed to get this market really going strongly. Thank you, Katri.
Thanks, William. Very interesting points, and like we will touch the kind of the economic model of fixed wireless access. But before we go there, Yves, how is it then with Orange? I guess there the investments struggles are a bit different, I assume.
Well, hello everyone. Just a few, yes, how we see fixed wireless access and 5G fixed wireless access. First, maybe, and that's a bit of a reaction on what William said, we don't see so much fixed wireless access as a market I'm talking about our position as an operator. In fact, we see that as one of the solutions that are available for us to deliver our services. And in fact, we are not pro or against any of the technology, whether we are talking about satellite, millimeter waves, any other point to multi-point technology, mobile, fiber, DSL, and so on. The point is, in each of the countries we operate in, and then in the different regions, what is the best technological choice to deliver our services? And at the end, the answer depends on the countries, depends on the regions, depends on the market. We do use fixed wireless access in some countries, mostly when it comes to Orange in Eastern Europe and in African countries, not that much in Western Europe. But that's the outcome of the technologies, the performance, and the markets in the different countries. So the message is, in fact, we need to talk in terms of what are the performance of the different technologies, what are the benefits, what are the economics, as William mentioned. In fact, there are different economics. And at the end, we assess in the different countries what is the best solution, the best choice to be made. Maybe if I have a bit of time, one additional comment. We did trial a few years ago, 26 gigahertz fixed wireless access 5G in a city in Romania. The outcome was the technology was great, works very well. But at the end, again, in another example of, we did not start any deployment. Well, at that time, and we still do not have a commercial license, so that was just a trial license. But technologies works very well. The point is really on what is the economics and how does that fit in the overall panel of the technologies available to deploy broadband services.
Thank you, Yves. I really like. In Finland, I think we see it a pretty similar way. It's not kind of, it's a complementary offering to really utilize the 5G here, specifically in Finland. We started to talk about fixed wireless access when 5G was introduced. But then finally, Nick, please share your thoughts on fixed wireless access.
Thanks, Katri. And hello, everybody. The company I work for, WIM Technologies, we are looking at providing software for the automation of radio networks. And my experience with fixed wireless access has been with helping recently a mobile operator in Africa. To deliver this service, and I see this as a great opportunity, and probably reflecting what Yves said. This is a way for mobile operators to provide another service, or they take a different take of the service they provide to their users, and mobile operators are best positioned to actually provide fixed wireless access because they already have the infrastructure. However, this can be a particular challenge to the operator, as this can cannibalize already on the mobile service that it provides, as there's a particular challenge in ensuring that the fixed wireless access doesn't become mobile. And what I mean by this is the end user taking their end terminal, which should be fixed at home, but actually taking it with themselves to their second home, to their workplace, or another location, and this no longer becoming a fixed access point, but a mobile one, as well as this creating a challenge for the operator to build capacity. My experience with the operator I mentioned was that this was indeed causing a problem, and they were actually, they mentioned that they were losing subscriptions, mobile subscriptions, and people signing up less for mobile subscriptions because the fixed wireless access options they were offering was more cost competitive, and through deploying smart automation to configure, to ensuring that the fixed wireless access terminals are accessible only for a specific location, then this challenge was able to be tackled. Unfortunately, we see that challenge being ignored by a lot of operators in most cases due to the complexity, but it's an area of the business that would need to be addressed if this is successful to for the growth of that business area for a mobile operator.
I think from Nick's example, we get to the point that actually the definition of fixed wireless access varies in different countries. Like in Finland, it's always like professionally installed, really like outdoor units that is screwed to your house's wall, and here it's mainly only like 5G. And for example, the offering that we have at DNA, the fixed wireless access comes with a 100 meg speed guarantee, so that you always have that kind of adequate amount of speed. But it would be really interesting to hear that how do you define fixed wireless access in your market, and where do you see the biggest opportunities with it? Yves, do you want to go first?
Yes. In fact, the way we define fixed wireless access is really one of the technologies available to deliver services. And what we deliver is mobile services and connecting households. So fixed wireless access is one solution to connect households among the various available. And you mentioned that, for example, in Finland, you do use 5G for fixed wireless access. For example, in France, we use also small number of customers, but we use also satellite to connect the most remote households. So this is just one of the solutions. The point is, in fact, the markets are pretty different in Western Europe. And if I talk about specifically France and Spain, where we are strong fixed operators deploying a lot of fiber, in fact, we are really focusing on the deployment of fiber, connecting customers on fiber, and there is no much room for fixed wireless access. So that's one of the complementary solutions. If we look at Eastern Europe, the revenues are pretty different. I'm talking about the fixed market, and there is much more room for fixed wireless access, and we already have a lot of customers that are connecting their households through our 4G network. Then the issues, as Nick mentioned, we have issues of managing these customers, of quality and so on. The question of do we have indoor or outdoor CPEs has been a very difficult question for years and years, and the answer is very, very difficult. The cost of the installation and how do we amortize that? That is something that has always been very complex. And at the end, the answer depends, in fact, on the markets. And I would expect that US is pretty different, as pretty specific, that Finland is pretty different from our case, for example, in Poland. And I'm not even talking about Africa. In Africa, we did something a bit different. We did have dedicated fixed wireless access in dedicated spectrum band. That was a long time ago using the WiMAX technology, and more recently, in fact, we moved to a 4G technology. What was specific is that we used dedicated spectrum. That was a way to manage the quality and to have mastered quality of service and no impact, no interaction with the mobile networks. So at the end, really different solutions depending on the markets, especially what is the situation on the fixed market in the different countries.
Nick, you mentioned about the challenge of like customers moving then the broadband, so it's not fixed. So how do you see kind of the fixed wireless access then in Africa? Go ahead, Nick.
Yes, the aspect I was talking about was specifically the type of fixed wireless access, which is the most economical and usually the go-to simple one, with a mobile terminal that can just post it to the end user. And as second what Yves said, this is one of the types that there's nothing to industry. But what I see is from around this is the one that usually is the easiest one to scale up, and it's cost effective. So though that's the most challenging one to ensure quality of service. This is the one, for example, that would work for countries in Africa, and what my experience is, since the cost of setup is very low versus using a fixed outside terminal or fixed wireless access to connecting to backbone mobile network or to a satellite. However, this is also something that we see in Western Europe. So I live in London, and due to the regulations here, it's actually quite costly for any company to lay out fibre cables in central London and provide that to all buildings. So what normally you have is very, very good service using mobile networks, 5G or 4G, versus fixed broadband at home, which usually goes through DSL line still. So there's in markets like this, honestly, like this, where regulation prohibits this, this is also the best. This best go-to strategy also for an entrance in the market and providing this service.
Yeah, I totally agree that like building fiber, as we know, is extremely expensive, and well, William, you pointed out a few of the kind of challenges that you've been having with the kind of getting the funding for the fixed wireless access. In Finland, actually, all the three mobile operators who also have fixed offering available is selling fixed wireless access, and basically they are targeted to these detached houses that are currently using like 4G and VDSL, and like, you know, Finland is not that kind of dense when it comes to the kind of population. Country is big, but the housing kind of density is not that high. But William, how do you see the economic model of fixed wireless access, and who are the players that have the possibilities to kind of leverage this?
Yeah, so I've been listening with interest to the discussion up till now, and you know, I think it's important, as we have been, to sort of differentiate between, if you like, fixed wireless access using mobile networks, which I kind of think of as opportunistic fixed wireless access, because you start to build a mobile network, and then you think to yourself, actually, I could also use this for fixed wireless access. So it's not a network built for fixed wireless access, but it's a network that can deliver fixed wireless access on the back of mobile service. And then alternatively, the network's sort of built purely for fixed wireless access, which are typically at the much higher frequency band. So, you know, a millimeter wave network that cannot in any way serve a mobile subscriber because there's no mobile terminals that do it. And even if there were, it wouldn't deliver the link budget or whatever. And it seems to me, you know, it's been interesting to hear. My take is the opportunistic fixed wireless access networks will struggle to survive long term in most environments. And the reason I say that is, if we look at the typical monthly usage of a household, let's say in the UK, it's about 500 or 600 gigabytes a month of data. That's the average. If we look at the average individual usage of a mobile phone, it's about 10 gigabytes. So there's about a 50-fold difference. Now, the average house has got two people, so it's perhaps 25-fold difference. But nevertheless, a subscription to a house which is about the same value or price as a subscription to a mobile, will consume 50 times more capacity on the network. Now, that's fine whilst you've got a network that's got lots of spare capacity, but that isn't going to last for very long. And all the projections show that the 5G networks are going to become significantly more congested by the time we reach about 2025. So actually, if you're offering a lot of fixed wireless access subscriptions on a mobile network in 2025, then you're going to have to turn down 50 times as many mobile subscribers as you might otherwise have, which means 50 times less revenue, which is obviously completely unsupportable. So I suspect that the mobile fixed wireless access side will dissipate, apart from in rural areas where there's always extra capacity. And then I think the other reason why I suspect the more specific networks will prevail is because they can deliver higher data rates. So the mobile networks, yes, you can get 100 megabits if you're lucky, but you know, as the networks get more congested, that will slow. Whereas the millimeter wave systems can realistically deliver 400 or 500 megabits a second, and indeed up to a gigabit per second if you have 60 gigahertz kinds of networks. So my feeling is we'll gravitate towards those kind of systems over time. The question is whether there's actually the economics to build and deploy those systems, or whether fibre will come along and take over. And certainly in the UK, we see enormous fibre investment, even though there are many difficulties, as Nick and others have rightly pointed out. There's just an absolute wall of money coming towards fibre deployment. And I think some of the recent companies have been raising, you know, multiple billions of pounds to deploy fibre. So I do think that fibre will actually be pushed out even to areas where it looks like it's uneconomic, which will challenge the fixed wireless access model.
Yeah, that is like interesting point that like fiber investments, even like over 20 years kind of payback times, is seen more lucrative than utilizing new technology and the capabilities it brings. But William, kind of you pointed out 5G and the millimeter wave. So Yves, how do you see the 5G and the millimeter wave shaping the fixed wireless access opportunities?
Well, in fact, I would more or less just emphasize what William said, that there are two different flavors of fixed wireless access, which is basically reusing the existing mobile networks and dedicated deployment. Where I may a bit disagree is, if I understood it correctly, that using the mobile network, that will disappear, or I would say in a different way, that will very slowly disappear. I expect that will still there is still something to be made using the 5G mobile network, kind of piggybacking fixed on that in areas, probably not in Western Europe, because in Western Europe we have a lot of copper and we will have a lot of fiber in the coming years. But in other areas where copper and fiber are far less deployed, there is still value to use the mobile network. I fully share all the question about the traffic, the quality that fixed wireless access customers use much more than mobiles. What I had in mind is 10 to 15 times, so it's pretty close to the 20 figure you mentioned. And this was a great issue we had in Eastern Europe on 4G. In fact, that the fixed wireless access customers do not impact the quality for the mobile customers. And that is still one of the significant concerns. So I would see that as two different markets, that the two of them will exist. The one on the mobile may slowly diminish, but that will take a lot of time. And there is still an opportunity for the 5G mobile network in the C-band, typically, to provide the fixed services. Maybe not competing with fiber, so in other regions, but still a business for that. And I fully agree that typically the millimeter wave is really fiber-like experience, and this is quite, in fact, a new market, a new opportunity, and we hope new technologies to be available that are very good price points in terms of equipment on the network and on the CPEs, and that is something that we hope to be able to make some good usage.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you, Yves, regarding the kind of the mobile broadband use. It's gonna be there for a long time. At least like the experience what we have in Finland is that because the price level of the mobile broadbands, is it fixed or then kind of best effort, is actually so much lower compared to the fiber. So and when the service quality is good, people don't see a need to actually just change to fiber. And the experience what we have from our fixed wireless access 5G users is actually the NPS is higher than any other broadband product we are having, and 9 out of 10 would actually recommend this service to others, which is fantastic result. But the fact is, like William pointed out, that yes, they use a lot of data. Our fixed wireless access users use 2 times more than the best effort 5G users in kind of home routers already. So it's 16 gigs per day, the data usage of our fixed wireless access users. But there was actually a comment from the audience that how do you manage or orchestrate 5G and slicing issues? Because of course, with slicing, there comes the opportunity to manage the kind of the service quality a bit differently. So I don't know if you want to share a few thoughts on slicing, and then maybe Nick.
Maybe on that, in fact, slicing. To be clear, slicing is not today active in our 5G networks. So this is still in deployment. So the 5G we have today is providing very good, excellent radio performance, but we do not have the slicing capabilities. What I expect in terms of slicing is just that to be one additional mean to manage the quality of the fixed wireless access customers and to really differentiate and separate the quality and master the quality of the different segments of customers. And that applies to fixed wireless access, which are the ones using most the highest capacity, the highest volume of data, but also even within the mobile customers, we have different segments. We have the high-end, we have the enterprise, we have the low-end customers who just want to pay a small amount and are not that asking a lot of quality. And slicing will help a lot to manage the quality, which is complex at the moment. To give you one example, in Eastern Europe, in some countries, we had to stop selling fixed wireless access offers in some areas because of the impact of on the mobile quality. So at the moment today, it's pretty complex. It's a bit of geo-marketing, and slicing will make that much more easy, less costly to manage and to handle.
Thank you. Nick, any thoughts on slicing or then millimeter wave as well?
So slicing is something that would be very much necessary if a mobile operator is to at large use the mobile network to provide fixed wireless access, and this allows for to actually guarantee at least improve the quality of service as the type of service that needs to be provided for fixed terminals need to be more guaranteed and better than actually mobile ones. However, the task actually for doing this for a fixed wireless access becomes a bit easier than one for providing quality of service for mobile users. And this is because for fixed wireless access, you know where the terminals are. And if you further restrict it, so going back to the point of the challenge, to restrict actually location access, then you really have the power to manage the capacity, plan the network accordingly to demand, and ensure with slicing that the quality of service for the fixed wireless access is what it should be, and this does not impact in any way the rest of the users using the same network for mobile access. So effectively, to summarize in a few words, it allows actually for the engineering teams to really plan for and dimension the capacity much easily than otherwise possible.
Thank you, Nick. We discussed quite a lot about the kind of the different markets, how they operate, what's the role of fiber. But William, I don't know, do you want to share your thoughts on why fixed wireless access has succeeded in some countries like Finland and Italy, while in other countries it has not taken off? And what do you see are the key blockers in the success of fixed wireless access?
Yeah, and I think it's a really interesting question, because Finland is so different and so successful, as you mentioned, and I'm interested in your take on it too. But when I looked into this, the understanding I got was that actually the fixed provision in Finland is relatively weak. There's a number. It's not one centralized company like it is in, let's say, the UK, where you have OpenReach, or similarly in other countries. There's a number of municipalities that have not been very effective in deploying fixed services, and that created a window effectively for mobile to get in there. And the mobile operators did that early on and deployed quite a dense grid of cell sites. So actually the network capacity is very high in Finland compared to other countries, because the density of the cell sites is much higher. And that's created a kind of an environment where, as you rightly said, it sort of self-perpetuates, because you've got a pretty good service on fixed wireless, and that makes it much harder to get a business case to deploy fiber. And then that sort of sticks around. I think in most other countries that the opposite has happened, that actually the fiber deployment to the cabinet or the home has been relatively good, which has meant that there hasn't been much demand really for fixed wireless access, not at a large scale. And that's meant the mobile networks haven't densified their networks to a high degree to serve that. And that's meant that they haven't got the capacity to deliver a high fixed wireless access, which has meant that it makes sense to deploy more fiber. So it seems that some countries get into a sort of a scenario where they've got fixed wireless access, it works well, and therefore that prevents fiber. Other countries, the converse. And I think most countries have fallen into that opposite level. The other interesting one perhaps is Italy, where they seem to be sort of stuck somewhere in the middle of that. They have got a couple of fixed wireless access operators. One's called Iolu, I forget the name of the other. who have, I think, of the order of 1 million customers between them. So, significant, not more than 5 or 10% of the market, but nevertheless a significant number. And that appears to be in rural areas. And again, because they kind of got in there early many years ago and to some degree forestalled the installation of fibre, because why would you go and put fibre into a place where the customer is already happy with fixed wireless access? So it appears to be a kind of a history of what came first, the fibre or the fixed wireless access. And depending on what happened, countries follow different routes. I mean, that's my observation, but I'm very interested in what others think on that one.
Yeah, any comments, Yves or Nick, on that?
Yeah, no, just to confirm. So yes, this is where we see, in fact, the difference between the fixed and the mobile market. So mobile market, especially in Europe, has been so standardized since 2G that in fact in all the countries we are pretty the same deployments. In fact, same technology for sure, but also same type of pylons and so on, same deployments. But when it comes to fixed, even from history, the situation has been pretty different in the different countries, from technologies, from regulation, and this is impact also the fixed wireless access market at the end.
Yeah, in Finland, like William pointed out, there's like 3 equal players that are fighting, and of course in the Nordics we have the challenge that the land is frozen half of the year, so building fiber it is slightly challenging. Whereas fixed wireless access you can get in 2 weeks, and everything is kind of set up for you, and you don't need to dig out your gardens or stuff. So it's really kind of easy and convenient way. And when the service quality is excellent, then like it doesn't matter how it's delivered to your home as long as it works, and that's of course our job as an operator to ensure that the quality is excellent. Good. Hey, really interesting points. There was a question from the audience to Yves regarding North Africa, and there's a big demand for data. Fiber deployment deployments are taking place. Is there a place for fixed wireless access, and what are the economics in the North Africa?
Well, when it comes to, and very good point, because we are sometimes talking about Africa, which is also in fact a continent that is very diverse, and West African coast, North Africa or Sub-Saharan are in fact different markets. It is true that when it comes to Orange, we are deploying fiber in Africa. Maybe one difference compared to typically Western Europe is that this is not nationwide deployment. So in terms of geographies, these deployments are much more limited in the big cities where there is a market for that. So deploying fiber and deploying fixed wireless access are not that much in competition, and there might be room for both in fiber in the very dense areas and fixed wireless access in the other areas in the country.
Nick, do you have any experience of the Northern African part that you would like to share?
Yes, so those are shared, to be honest, with so the situation in North Africa is similar to the whole of Africa, and especially as well some parts maybe of the world, so Asia and maybe South America, where the cost of scale of rolling out fiber to the premises is very high. And in general, just to assure that you can service the infrastructure, that also it's not going to be subject to theft, and we're talking about vast spaces. So I've seen the operators in both North Africa as well as the rest of Africa looking at the fixed wireless access as the biggest opportunity to provide fiber to a premises-like service through fixed wireless access. And this is both for rural areas and urbanized areas. So in what I see, it's actually, from my perspective, this to actually provide the same benefits in terms of economics. In rural areas, then it allows to reach multiple multiple locations, multiple users with less infrastructure. But the same thing goes into a big city. It's all about really the servicing this, the amount of people that need to be deployed and put on the field in order to service this. And just by eliminating the last link of providing fiber to the home, which is through a wireless channel, this gives an immense opportunity for reducing the cost in providing such a service in Africa.
I think we've been talking about quite a lot of the cost of different technologies, and like I said, fixed wireless access clearly has benefits of bringing it into specifically areas where the building of fiber is extremely expensive. We talked about the technologies, we talked about the millimeter wave slicing, etc., but we haven't touched the devices part yet. So the equipment in fixed wireless access. So William, any thoughts on the gear part?
Yeah, and the critical element really is cost, because for the user terminal, you're going to have whatever 200 to 500 of those per cell site. So actually, even if the cell site is relatively expensive, often the economics are dominated by the cost of the user terminal, and it's pretty hard to get the user to pay for that. They expect that to be provided kind of for free or for some nominal fee as part of an ongoing service. So what we find is getting the cost of that terminal down is really critical. And in an ideal world, you get it down towards the $100 price point. Now we're a long way from that. Certainly in the millimeter wave band, I think most terminals are still somewhere in the $500 price point, or even more, depending on the type of antenna that you want to put onto that terminal. So there's definitely an issue there. And partly that's an economies of scale problem, that at the moment there aren't that many of these terminals being built, nothing like the scale of mobile handsets, for example. And so that makes it very hard to get custom chipsets and similar kinds of things that can really bring the cost down. And instead you end up using sort of more generic FPGA type arrangements, which get pretty expensive on the chips and on the antennas. So it does feel like there's a need to drive that cost down. But of course, it's a bit chicken and egg, that what drives the cost down is extensive deployment, but extensive deployment doesn't happen until the cost gets lowered. And that's a problem for many things. But in bigger markets like the mobile markets, you'll often see manufacturers or operators effectively seeding 5G handsets into the market or whatever, in order to get the whole thing moving and take a loss early on for a bigger gain later on. And we don't see that in the fixed wireless access market much, because I think it's still too uncertain a marketplace. So I think there is a bit of an issue for those higher frequency terminals. Much less of an issue if you just want to have a C-band 3.5 gigahertz 5G indoor router, because that's basically a handset in a larger box with a Wi-Fi router bolted on the back of it, essentially, so you can leverage the economies of scale that handsets deliver you for that.
Yeah, but I think the kind of the world economic situation has impacted the fact that even the kind of the basic 5G router prices have not kind of eroded the same way that we have used to kind of have technology eroding. And I think this chicken egg problem that you highlighted, that applies, I think, to the kind of the rollout of 5G. I don't know, Yves, final thoughts on that remark before we have to close.
Yeah, fully agree. Just to restate what William said, what is the most costly in a mobile network? The devices, just because of the number. What I would just add is, in fact, we should benefit from the economies of scale of 5G. Hopefully, the market for fixed wireless access devices should be a global market. So even if in a single country that may not be a huge volume, I hope that globally that's a volume significant that justify the investment and drive the cost down. If I may add on one point, from our point of view, there is the cost of the device plus the cost of the installation. and then the overall, and that makes the subscriber acquisition cost even higher, and that's exactly something that has huge impact on the business case and on the decision. And as William mentioned, that sometimes just is something that is a bit, how to say it, we are slow in making the decisions because that is so huge volumes, and in fact the risk is so high that it sometimes delay a bit some projects.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for the audience. I think as we can hear from the discussion, the kind of the opportunities that fall under the fixed wireless access term are actually very diverse, and there is a lot of opportunities, especially for the kind of traditional operators, but also with the right economic and funding, there should be opportunities for new players as well to enter the market with these high-speed opportunities in different regions. Thank you on my behalf of this very vivid discussion.